Hello, welcome back to my channel, and welcome to day 2 of Booktober. Ba ba bomb. Yep, that's what's happening. I've got another chatty video for you guys today. As you can see from the title, we are going to be going over my the Reddit fantasy bingo board, how my TBR is doing, and I'm gonna be honest, pretty good. I'm kind of proud of myself. If you aren't familiar, I posted my fantasy bingo TBR in April, because it's usually April to March is like your time. I posted my like unofficial TBR with ideas that I had for the bingo board. It's different every year. There's a couple prompts that are the same, but the hard mode prompts change a little bit. I am always striving for the hard mode because I love chaos, and what more fun than going balls to the walls. So I figured it'd be nice to check in, talk about how what I've read so far for the challenge, as well as what I need to make up and read before March 31st. The first prompt square is to read the first book in a series. The hard mode was to read something like a series longer than just a trilogy, and for this I went with The Bridge Kingdom. That counts. Yeah, that's fantasy. I'm so brain broken and dead from September's readathons and everything happening. I genuinely was just like, is that actually a fantasy book? Is that speculative? Yeah, no, it's not. It's not set in the real world. Ay, ay, ay. Also, Bridge Kingdom by Daniel L. Jensen. There we go. I knew I could get there. The 5th book is coming out in October. I'm so excited. It's going to be available on Audible in the Audible Plus catalog first, and then in 6 months it'll come back. It'll like be traditionally published in a like book format that you can hold. I'm so excited. I'm so excited. But yeah, I read The Bridge Kingdom. I really enjoyed it's a set of duologies, but it's a series, so I'm counting it. Even though when I read it and counted it for this, I didn't know at the time that each set of 2 books would be following different characters, but it's all set in the same world. It's all, we're counting it. Leave me alone. Okay, the next one was an alliterative title, 3 or more, which means like the title having the same letter to begin with. And for this I went with The Utterly Uninteresting and Unadventurous Tales of Fred the Vampire Accountant. And what a fun little book. I've read the first 2 in the series. There's more in it. This would also count for the first prompt. I had a blast. It's so kooky and fun. It doesn't take itself serious. I had a blast with it, and I do recommend it. I've always seen it in the Reddit forums of recommendations, so I'm glad that I finally picked it up. It's a good time. Third prompt that I've completed. Under the surface, 50% of the book takes place there. I went with Feybound. I think it counts because they like leave. I'm gonna be so real and honest with you. I have blocked out all of Feybound. I remember like two things from it. It was not a successful win for me. It was about 2 stars. Unfortunately, I did not love it. But I will also be reading Our Wives Under the Sea this year before the deadline, so I'll for sure check this off no matter what. The next prompt was criminals, and it had to feature a heist, and so I had read both The Absinthe Underground and A Tempest of Tea, which both are heisty books. One is fae, the other has vampires. So that's cool. Neither of those were successful wins. I'm realizing that I have not been reading nearly enough good books this year. What a shame. But, you know, either way, hard mode checked. Done. Let's go. The next prompt is dreams. Hard mode, non-magical dreams. I'm gonna be honest, I would like more books with magical dreams. Like, give me prophecies and, you know, like Strange the Dreamer. That book has incredible magical dreams, and I would like more of those in books that I like more. But for this, I read both romantasy books, because that's a common trope of like the main character having a bad nightmare, has nothing to do with anything except for her trauma, and then the love interest is like, oh, let me wake her and comfort her and make her feel all better. So for this I read The Throne of Honor and Blood by Jay Bree and Vows and Ruin by Helen Schwerscher. I can never remember how you pronounce her last name. Schwerscher? I'm a very good booktuber, and I'm really good at talking. I'm sure you've noticed by now. Thanks for hanging out with me. The next successful one, let's freaking go, man. Entitled Animals, and hard mode is if it's a mythical animal in the title. Originally I was planning to read Dragonfall. I don't know when I'm gonna get to that at this point, but I did end up picking up the Tea Dragon Society, just the first book. It's a middle grade about these girls, and they get these cute little tea dragons. Oh, they're so cute, and they make little tea leaves. I don't even like tea, but this book makes me want to like tea. It's absolutely precious and adorable, and I do recommend them if you, for whatever reason, haven't picked them up. And the next prompt being bards, where they explicitly have to be called bards. Normally they're just poets or sonnets or singers and musicians, but in When the Moon Hatched, although she's technically an assassin, the first couple chapters she's a bard, and she explicitly calls herself a bard because D&D, and I love that, so I'm counting it. But I also am hoping to maybe get to Bloody Rose. I'm not like super sure, but I would like to. Oh, okay, the next one, prologues and epilogues, and hard mode if it has both. And for this I read City of Stardust by Georgia Summers. Another book I didn't like. I just didn't. It wasn't for me. I didn't like it. If you did like it though, read Book of Doors. That's an even, in my opinion, better version of it. But hey, did that. Hard mode complete. That's all that matters. Doesn't have to be a good book. The next one was honestly challenging. Every time I picked something, the ratings would eventually go back up, but self-published or independently published with under 100 ratings. For this, I've gone with Underneath by Lily Wong. Technically, it is speculative. It's pure horror. I don't widely recommend it. Definitely check trigger warnings, read my Goodreads review, maybe watch a live discussion about it. Like, it's not like a book that I widely recommend, but it's so incredible. But technically, it is speculative because it's from a ghost's perspective. The ghost is like walking you through the story, and there's like a little bit magical realism to it. Therefore, it counts. It's the one condition it has to be speculative. Okay, the next is Romantasy with a Queer MC. Feybound counts for this, technically. I'm currently reading Thrown in the Dark, and the male love interest is bisexual, even though it's not like a big part of the book or like widely talked about. That is a fact about him. I'm not super far into it though, but it's a hoot of a time. It's funny. On top of that, I this year need to read A Taste of Golden Iron, and that will be the book that like successfully checks this prompt off fully 10,000% for me. But that is where we're at. Dark Academia is another that I have not fully checked off. Hard mode is that it needs to be a mundane school. So it's a magic world, mundane school. I've read Vita Nostra. I don't know if I count it as a mundane school, knowing what I know about it. Part of me wants to, but I'm using Vita Nostra in a different challenge slot right now, so I'm not sure. What do you want from me, punk? So I'm unsure, but I'm still on the hunt. So if you have a Dark Academia magical book, but the school is like normal and not like teaching magic, then let me know. On my list I have Blood Over Bright Haven, Playbound Heroines potentially, and I have Legendborn. I think any of those three would count for this, and those are the tentative TBRs. The next one is Multiple POVs, hard mode having over 5. When the Moon Hatched technically counts for this, but because I'm using it for the Bard's prompt right now, I haven't completed this. So I'm thinking either Six of Crows, Jonathan Strange, and Mr. Noel, which is honestly so chunky and intimidating, or the Jasmine Throne, which I did end up purchasing for like reading this year. But I'm so intimidated by it. It's also very chunky. But yeah, those are my picks. Those are the options of things that I'm hoping to get to. One that I have completed though, debut published in 2024. My bread and butter. So far I've read The Last Blood Carver, and The City of Stardust also counted for this, but The Last Blood Carver by Vanessa Lay, that one I highly recommend. It's so fun. It's so good. I really liked it, and the ending hurts. But yeah, that was a good debut that I'm really excited to read the sequel for. The next prompt that I've completed is A Character with Disabilities, hard mode. It's the main character, Sunbringer. It's a sequel to Godkiller by Hannah Canner. So good. The representation in that book is top tier. Also, just like the world itself is top tier. I love gods meddling in things, and I love the idea of like minor gods and major gods of different types. So there is a god character who is the god of white lies. It's so good. It's so good. It's dense fantasy, but I can't not rave about it. It's not even a 5-star series for me. They're both like strong 4 stars, but I can't help but rave about the books every time. The next one is published in the 1990s, Hard Mode, that the same author has published a book or some type of work in the last 5 years. And for this, I'm choosing to go with Daughter of the Forest. I'm nervous because Carrie Can Read recently read it, and this is like a very beloved series, which is great. I'm really excited to jump into it. It's got this fairy tale feel. It's based on Seven Swan Brothers fairy tale. And my issue though is that there is on page sexual assault, but she said that it was handled well and like discussed well and like does have an impact on the story, but I think I'll be able to handle it. But I'm glad that I know going into it that that will be there. But yeah, Daughter of the Forest, I've only seen raving reviews. Like, everybody seems to love it. It's popped up a lot this year, so that's my pick. Whenever I get to it, I have it's an Audible exclusive, I think. So I paid for it on Audible. Either way. So that's where I will listen to it when the time comes. Oh goodness. The next prompt I also not completed, which is Orcs, Trolls, and Goblins, oh my. Hard Mode, the main character is one of the 3. Legends and Lattes is on my TBR, so if I read that, that'll count. If not, The Goblin Emperor was widely recommended, and I might check that out. That's about a boy that becomes a little prince, and he's a goblin. But that's like a very widely recommended book. But I did also read Goblins and Greatcoats by Travis Baldree, and this is like 14 pages, super short story fiction, but the main character was also a goblin, and that would also count. But since it was so short, I won't count it this time. Oh, the next one is also one that I've not picked up. Space Opera, Hard Mode, author of Marginalized Gender Identity. I have 2 picks. They're on my TBR. Space Opera intimidates the heck out of me. The first one that I'll probably be the one that I pick up will be The Principle of Moments. But the other option I have is Some Desperate Glory. I will try not to forget to read those by the time March rolls around, but I'll be honest, that feels like the one that I would forget. The next prompt that I've completed is Author of Color, Hard Mode this year. This changes every year. Hard Mode is debut in the last 5 years, and I read The Jasad Air. Not hair. The Jasad Air. Oh my god, it's so good. It's so good. Oh, it's so good. I'm so excited for the sequel. I cannot wait. I'll probably end up doing a reread. I don't even think you can see it, but there's a cup, and it's a silly goose mug. And the quote is, she has the temper of a deranged goose. It's a good book. It's a really good book. I highly recommend. Next prompt. Wow, I have knocked out so many. I'm so proud of myself. Survival. Hard Mode, a non-pandemic book. The Lake House. I don't want to go too far into this because it's not really marketed as a speculative story, but it's horror, it's YA, it's about these 3 girls going to a summer camp, but the camp has burnt down and nobody is around, and they have to survive. And it's pretty good for a YA. I had a good time with it. I do recommend it. Oh goodness. The next one. Oh goodness. The next one is judge a book by its cover. Don't read anything but the cover. And oh boy did I with The Prisoner of Silk. If you're unfamiliar with this book and you've never heard me talk about this title, I have a whole deep dive, not quite rant review, but also it's kind of a rant review. I wasn't pleased with this book. So if you're interested, I have a little deep dive where I talk about it. It's basically Marie Antoinette, Sleeping Beauty crossover fanfic. It's very strange, but I read it and I wanted to talk about it, so I have a whole video. Ow! Why are you attacking me? The next one, as I mentioned earlier, I read Vita Nostra, which I'm using for the set in a small town prompt. The hard mode is that it has to be a real or fictionally... The town itself can be real or fiction, but it has to be set in the real world. So Vita Nostra is set in a fictional small town in Russia. So I think that it counts. And so I'll be using it for that. I loved Vita Nostra. It's like one of the books that I'm like, wow, I'm so happy I finally read this. I should have picked it up sooner, to be honest. I'm so glad that it was gifted to me. It was a great book. It's so it's so weird. It's so freaking weird. But I had a lot of fun with it. The next completed prompt is 5 short stories, hard mode. It's in an anthology. I don't think it had to be like hard cut only 5 stories, because that would probably be really hard. But I read Never Whistle at Night, which wasn't a win for me. I didn't really love it that much. It wasn't quite as speculative as I wished it was. I wish that it leaned heavier in the fantasy horror side of things rather than having so many like real world horror. And I'm sure if like I sat down and like went through each of the stories to be like, these ones are speculative, these ones aren't, there would probably be about 5. So I think that counts. Okay, the next one is Eldritch Creatures. Hard mode, non-Lovecraftian, which is fine because I don't think I'm going to pick up on H.P. Lovecraft, maybe ever. That sounds so scary. That sounds so intimidating. His English is so hard to understand. My pea brain, nay. But I did read Ring Shout earlier this year by P. Jelly Clark, and although not my favorite, it did give me one of my favorite quotes of the year. And I laugh every time I think about it, so I'm not going to be upset about the fact that I read this. I think it's a very nice short novella horror. I had fun with it. Fun is not the correct word for this book. There was enjoyment out of the writing and the characters for the topic that it's discussing. Wow. Down to the last 2. One that I didn't complete and one that I did. The one I have not completed was the reference material. There needs to be at least 2 types for the hard mode. So like, say there's a map in the front and a glossary in the back. Technically, When the Moon Hatched does count for this. Well, now you want to lay down? Technically, When the Moon Hatched does count for this, but since I've already used it for a previous prompt, I can't reuse it. So that's just knowledge for me to have. But that one has like 3 different glossaries, a map. It's absolutely insane. I think there's a family tree in there or something. It's crazy. But I have 2 options. The Mask of Mirrors being one, which is like higher priority of interest of books that I'm just wanting to read. My other option is Ray Bearers, which I need to read this year for a video. So it will definitely get checked off this year, and that's a good feeling. The last and final prompt that I've actually done, which is normally the one that people will swap out. You usually get one swap that you can take this year's prompt and swap it with one of last year's if like you don't think you can complete it for whatever reason. But the final one is same prompt every year, and it's to read a book club or do a read along, and it has to be like current and you discuss it. And I read Someone You Can Build a Nest In the same month. I want to say it was like June or something. And I read it at the same time on the Goodreads, and I read it, and it was definitely a time. I don't remember as much of it now, but I remember having a good time, and I really like the romance. It's a monster's POV. It's a mix of horror, because you have this monster who's like eating people, who falls in love with this girl who nurses her back to health, and it's just like this sweet romance and so tender, and like meeting the wife's family, and then like you have like this horror side of it's such a weird mishmash of genres and balance, but it was so fun, and I do recommend it. I think it was also a debut, so I definitely think you should check that out if it sounds interesting to you. Also, the cover is gorgeous. So that's where we're at. I currently have 7 prompts left to complete. That feels so doable. 7 books by March? I could do that. I could so do that. I could totally do that. So that makes me feel pretty solid about myself. Like that's like success. I'm over halfway and we're only in October. Go me, heck yeah. How are you doing? Are you participating in our fantasy? How are you doing on your other challenges? 12 friends recommend 12 books, anybody? 24 in 2024, anybody? I'm doing bad. It's not good. So I have a lot of books to be reading before the end of the year, but those I should probably prioritize because those don't have an extra 3 months like our fantasy does. But if you're participating, let me know how you're doing with it so far and like what your favorite book has been for our fantasy so far. I would love to know. But yeah, that's gonna be it for this little video. I hope that you guys enjoyed. It's nice to see progress on challenges, especially like year-long challenges, when you forget about them so often halfway. This is like the one challenge that I, for whatever reason, have clung on to, and I'm like, yes, this is the one that I will succeed. No others but this one. But that's gonna be it for me. I hope that you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys tomorrow for a reading vlog. Ooh, bye.